Ladies and gentlemen, my privilege tonight to introduce to you Dr.
I'm disappointed that there was an announcement to the effect that there will be refreshments after this event. Because you see, then it means I can't talk forever. You are thinking about food. It's really an honor and a privilege for me to stand here and say a few words about Lord Ndlovu, this great son of our land. To imagine that when I first met him, I was fundraising for something, and somebody had suggested that I go and see a Lord Ndlovu, who was working for People's Bank or something. And I said, I don't know him. He said, no, he's a great guy, just go and see him. And indeed, I saw him. I presented my case. He listened very politely, and he said he will see what he could do. But I don't think he gave me any money. I might be wrong, maybe he did. But afterwards, we met many times in work environments and functions and so on. And we became very fond of each other. But we never, I'm surprised that we never talked about ourselves and our families. And it is only now that I realized that we have not done that. Anyway, I thank the family, the foundation, EMF, for giving me this pleasure and this honor. Program Director, Ms. Ndlovu and family, Professor Wiseman Ndlovu, Chairperson of the Maduke Lord Ndlovu Legacy Trust, Andile Nomlala, President of the BMF stalwarts and past presidents, BMF board members, Ms. Shirley Machava, the only one to pronounce my name correctly this evening. She is the event sponsor, as she said, and she also CEO of PwC Southern Africa. PCW partners, ladies and gentlemen. Maduke Lord Ndlovu was born on a white man's farm in Grill, Mpumalanga. He lived in a mud house, sleeping on a straw mat on a mud floor, and most probably went to a mud school with multiple classes, meaning several grades would be taught by one teacher in one room at the same time. Most probably his teacher was not qualified. I should know this because I was also born on a white man's farm, a child of farm workers. I was born 4 years before him, also in August, and also in the old Transvaal, him in Kriel and me in Tzaneen. Like him, I started school in a mud church on another farm, which required a long distance walk to school at a very tender age. School transport was unknown and unthinkable for a farm school pupil. In any case, we used mainly footpaths. Most probably his parents had to work on the farm for 3 months for nothing in lieu of staying on the farm, a system called 3-Monday or Shumela Boroko, Sebenzela ukulala. Most probably, he and his siblings had to do their own 3-Monday. That's why there is something to the effect that Lord hated farm work and his sisters had to do it for him. That is, he and his siblings were subjected to child labor. Clearly, Lot was born into poverty, hunger, oppression, discrimination, exploitation, dehumanization, and cruelty of one human being to another. He was immersed in subjugation and want from birth, lived them, and therefore did not have to learn about them from books and newspapers. It was simply part of his upbringing. In the March church school I went to, I would recite, Baba bless you, yes, yes, to bear food. Wa for masa, wa for tititi. I didn't have the foggiest idea what it meant. It sounds hilarious if it was not tragic. It inculcates subliminal acceptance of committing to memory things that have no meaning to you, but means something to someone else. More than anything, it means that the deprivation of a meaningful foundation in the educational journey of a Black child, particularly an African child whose home language is not English. This lack of a sound foundation for learning might dog a person throughout his or her own educational journey, and very likely determine his or her station in life. It explains in part why there is such a high dropout rate among African children in our education system, going right up to university. In later life, when you know better about what education should be, you get angry why they didn't get you recite mapimpana mapimpana manasese are sekolong. Tlhogo ke tlhapile, maoto ke tlhapile, letlapa le kae? Ruri ke le lebetse. In this way, I would be reciting a rhyme with meaning and understanding. When I went Baba bless you at home and the aunties were listening, they would say, but even the aunties would have understood what it meant. I would be laying a solid foundation for future learning, which with such formidable obstacles within the learning journey of Black children, especially the African component thereof, it requires a Herculean effort for them to progress on their educational journey. It is against such odds that Lord Ndlovu battled to become the towering figure we have come to know. Lord Ndlovu is a study in perseverance, in grit and determination. Through sheer doggedness, combined with brilliance, he rose from dust to a decent life. He is also an eloquent demonstration of the potency of education as a weapon against poverty and underdevelopment. Through education, Lot escaped from the squalor of farm dwellers, the mud house, the mud school, and 3 Monday, or whatever 3 Monday has morphed into in the current dispensation. What is more, the power of education is intergenerational. Because Lot escaped through education, his children and grandchildren will not go Baba bless she any yes to bear food. Monde, his son and his siblings definitely went Baba black sheep. You have you any wood? Yes, to bear food. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a big deal. Through the dogged actions of Lord Ndlovu to escape poverty and squalor, He has pulled all his progeny and their children out of poverty simply because the children of educated parents are more likely to be educated than those of uneducated parents. It is most probable that those families that did not have Lord in their midst in Kriel are still mired in abject poverty and scant education, if any. Lord Ndlovu understood this perfectly. It might explain why he donated money for a bursary scheme for poor but deserving students at tertiary level. This in turn inspired the Black Management Forum to establish the Lord Ndlovu bursary scheme. It might also explain why he was so passionate about the work of the Human Resource Development Council, where we served together for a number of years. With this understanding of the potency of education as a weapon against poverty, it is a crying shame that we, as a country, are not pulling out all stops to give our young people good quality education. We talk a lot about poverty and inequality in our country, but neglect to effectively use a weapon that is in our hands to fight these ills. One of the most important things to do to fight poverty is to educate the children of the poor in particular. Education is the greatest leveler of them all. Look no further than Lord Ndlovu. With his education, Lord Ndlovu, the son of farm workers, became indistinguishable from the sons and daughters of teachers, of lawyers, of priests, of doctors, or business people. There are people who are saying the greatest level of them all is the toilet, because all of us must go there. Regardless of you are standing, you can't send somebody to go to the toilet for you. Imagine where we would have been by now if the advent of democracy 20 years ago, we paid particular attention to the education of the children of the poor. We would have produced a lot of mundane Ndlovus who are productive citizens in the country, who are not queuing up for social grants or RDP houses, who are building or renting their own homes and paying school fees for their own children. Above all, they would be creating employment for others and paying taxes, thereby expanding the tax base in our country. But because we are not doing well in education, we are sitting with legions of unemployed, unemployable, and idle young people who represent a ticking time bomb. It is indeed painful to go past a post office these days and behold queues of able-bodied young people lining up to collect the 350 rand that the state is offering. Move around our townships and villages on any working day and see how strong and healthy young people who should be at work contributing to the economy loiter in the streets, more often than not with a bottle of beer in hand. And then we turn around and complain about high levels of poverty in our country. What do we expect? Perhaps there are too many of us in this country who have subconsciously fallen prey to the habit of mouthing things without taking the trouble to understand what they mean, what their implications are. We would talk about the need to educate our young simply as something nice to say, but do not interrogate what it means. In other words, we don't mean what we say, and therefore it doesn't matter a jot if we don't implement it. Are we perhaps just blashing our education system? Otherwise, how do we explain the fact that we seem to be just going through the motions in as far as educating the children of the poor is concerned? Or could it mean that we, Blacks, particularly the petty bourgeoisie, have internalized the lie that was drummed into our heads that we are inferior, that we are not as worthy as other human beings, that we deserve an inferior status in life? If indeed we have internalized the lie, would it therefore explain why we do not do our best to serve and treat our people properly, serve them with dignity and pride? Would it explain, at least in part, why we do not seem to be particularly ashamed when our performance and duty is woeful? Why don't we believe in our heart of hearts that Black children in the townships and villages deserve a decent education? Why is it that under our watch, South Africa has become the most unequal society in the world? Why do we just pronounce on that again and again? Well, you see people say we are the most unequal society in the world, but do nothing concrete to solve the problem. Who is going to solve the problem for us if we don't? Why with us, the Black petty bourgeoisie in charge of municipalities, as councillors, as municipal managers, as financial officers, and the like, Black people in the townships and villages receive the most appalling services. The refuse not removed as often as required, forcing people to dump rubbish in neighborhoods, sewage flowing in the streets, so often that it is no longer news, and potholes that offer motorists unending multiple choices. You will not say that you are not going to drive into a pothole. You simply have to choose which one you are going to drive into. Why are we not ashamed of these multiple failures? Do we perhaps subliminally believe that Black people, simply by virtue of their race, do not deserve better? Is appalling services what they deserve? There are mikuku everywhere you go in our country, and the squalor and indignity associated with them is known. And we don't have to ask who lives in them. Whenever you see a mikuku, you know a Black person lives in it. Have we perhaps internalized that Black people live in mikuku and therefore do not deserve a robust campaign to eradicate them? You know, cattle belong to crows, chickens to chicken runs, and pigs to pigsties. So there is nothing unusual about that. And we don't expect cattle to complain about being kept in the kraal. Have we perhaps come to accept that Black people in South Africa live in mikuku, that this is the way the universe is organized? If not, why don't we try hard to eradicate mikuku? South Africa is not a poor country. We are blessed with all sorts of minerals, wonderful and varied climate, where we can produce all manner of crops and keep different species of animals. Above all, we have enough skilled people to build residential areas where our citizens can live in dignity. Under the watch of the Black petty bourgeoisie, that is most of us in this room, Eskom, the Post Office, DNL, SAA, and other state-owned enterprises are on their knees. Yes, it is not ordinary citizens in the townships and villages that have mismanaged and pillaged these SOEs, but us, the petty bourgeoisie, or what others call the Black middle class or the intelligentsia, who are destroying these national assets. It is us. This is the class that the Bantu Biko, Chris Hani, Mangali Sobukwe, Rolihlahla Mandela and others belong to. A class that was in the leadership of the liberation struggle. This class is now stealing the resources of the very citizens it helped to liberate from settler colonialism. It is under our watch that some family came into South Africa from India, captured our president and put him in their back pocket, and then proceeded to loot our SOEs under our noses, that is, with our connivance. This is at least what the Zondo Commission has told us. Are we ashamed by this scandalous occurrence? Do we feel undermined? Do we feel taken for fools? Can such a thing happen in any other country in the world where people respect themselves? We, the black petty bourgeoisie, are in charge of the criminal justice system that is hardly worth its name. We have a population that is tormented by rampant crime, while some in our midst walk around with big titles of minister, National Police Commissioner, of brigadier, of head of NPA, of prosecutor or judge or magistrate of whatever division, while the citizens are tormented, are terrorized by criminals. Women and children are raped, maimed, or killed while we walk around with these big titles. What we tell our families and neighbors, that we have these important titles, but we can't tame criminals? Where is our pride and dignity? Are we ashamed by the fact that we are not performing? Or is it the Baba Blashi phenomenon? For years, we have been complaining about the theft of cables, theft of cables that are crippling the operations of ESCOM and the railways. The working people are forced to resort to other modes of transport and that are less cost-effective or comfortable, because PRASA is limping. The transport of bulk goods for exports are forced to resort to trucks because Transnet has its tracks and cables almost freely harvested by thieves. This has been happening for years. We talk about it in Parliament and elsewhere, but we don't seem able to solve the problem. Where are our intelligence services, or of both the national and crime varieties? Can they protect the country if they can't solve something like this for decades? And this is us, the black petty bourgeoisie, in charge. Look at us, the black petty middle class, bungling migration and immigration so badly that we have pitted ordinary South African citizens against citizens of other countries. Our neighbors, such as the landlocked Botswana or Zimbabwe, which share borders with 4 or so other countries, don't just stand around and talk about porous borders. They simply take care of their borders. Control and management of migration and immigration and the security of your borders goes to the very heart of sovereignty. Citizenship and all its rights and obligations rest on the control of your borders. You can't have citizens if you have no borders. And what is the use of having borders if you can't secure them, when anybody can come in and out as they please? But as South Africans, we don't know who is in our country. Even if Boko Haram or ISIS or any other terrorist group was to come into our country, we would not know. In fact, through its failure to manage migration, South Africa is undermining good relations among Africans and thereby undermining African integration and the goals of Pan-Africanism, because we are causing irritation and fighting amongst Africans. You can't have a borderless Africa if South Africa is the only one that is borderless even then not through design, but through incompetence, while the rest of the countries on the continent retain the integrity of their borders. It is absurd and unworkable. So if you are a Rodovan crasher with a serious criminal band or a gang of criminals doing cash in transit stuff, or a simple zama, you go to South Africa to advance your criminal enterprise. It is easy in South Africa. We can go on and on about the glaring failures of the Black petty bourgeoisie in South Africa. Its failures to embark on a serious and meaningful land reform program, failure to ensure Blacks have a decent and equitable stake in the economy of their country, its mismanagement of the health sector, etc., has put our country on a downward spiral that might lead to a failed state. The Black petty bourgeoisie represents the biggest threat to stability, political and social order in South Africa. I repeat, the Black petty bourgeoisie represents the biggest threat to stability, political and social order in South Africa. This class is hogging the levers of state power for its own social and economic advancement, but remains deaf to the cries of the mainly poor Black section of the population in the townships and villages. We use the state to advance our own interests, but opt out of the services that it is supposed to offer. We use private security for our safety. We go to private doctors and hospitals when we are sick, send our children to former Model C schools or private ones, while running the public ones that serve the majority of the citizens into the ground. One Sue Grafton once opined that if high-heeled shoes were a good thing, men would be wearing them. High-heeled shoes are not good for your back. They don't give you a good grip on the ground, and they are not suitable for running or physical work. And despite the fact that historically, men have been designing, manufacturing, and selling high-heeled shoes, they don't wear them themselves. They leave them for women. Now, on a visit to Cuba, they were going on and on about the evils of their colonizers, the Spanish. And at one point I asked them, but did the Spanish do anything good? He said, yes, the only two things they did was to give us mulattoes and flat shoes. And nothing else. So if Sue Grafton is right, there is something amiss when we, the Black intelligentsia, design and run the public education system, the health system, the security system, but we will not use them. And we don't seem to see or hear the cries of the citizens who, on a daily basis, are spilling into the streets. If you are at home and watching TV, you'll probably see them spilling into the streets, demanding services and support. They are heard on a daily basis singing, Amalungelo, Tina Silver, Amalungelo, every day, Amalungelo. On a daily basis, every day. Who is depriving them of Amalungelo? It is us. But do we hear them? Do we hear our people crying? People cannot endure suffering and deprivation forever. It doesn't matter who does the oppressing. The country will simply explode if the status quo continues much longer. For this country to survive, we need a conscious and ethical Black petty bourgeoisie that is free from colonial and slave mentality. one that identifies with its people and seeks to serve them diligently and honestly, one that is not preoccupied with running away from its people as fast as possible, one that respects itself, one that is in solidarity with the suffering Black majority. And when the country explodes, everyone will be affected. Farm dwellers are the most downtrodden section of the Black population. Lord Ndlovu emerged from the loins of farm workers, yet he did not internalize the lie that Black people do not deserve respect, dignity, and human worth. Whether Lord Ndlovu worked as a clerk at Home Affairs or as an HR officer in a private company, or as a leader in a big company, or as president of the Black Management Forum, he would do his best to advance the economic, educational, and social upliftment of the Black majority. Above all, to the last day of his life, he identified with his people. He never forgot where he came from. For this country to get out of this rut, we need Black people, especially the Black petty bourgeoisie, who are free from slave mentality, who are proud of who they are, who are in solidarity with one another, who believe in the worth and dignity of other Black people. We are not in this mess in South Africa because of lack of knowledge and skills, but for lack of consciousness and self-belief on the part of the Black petty bourgeoisie. It is apparent that many Black people in South Africa, especially in the public sector, do not believe they have agency. Hence the continued harping on apartheid and its ills. Yes, colonialism is evil and it hurt us, but we cannot be perpetual victims of others until the end of time. We have got to take our destiny into our own hands and build a beautiful, fair, equitable, just, and dignified society for future generations. I'm told that a survey has revealed that young people of all races, especially those with good education skills, are contemplating leaving South Africa. They are losing hope. They are running away from us, their parents. We cannot build that non-racial, or what I call anti-racist society, if Blacks continue to regard themselves as inferior and perpetual victims of others. We can't build a future for our children if our gaze is forever on the rearview mirror. We can't grow and thrive on victimhood. We should use our 1994 breakthrough, not as an end, but as a ladder to put our country on a path towards greatness. For this country to thrive, we need Blacks who are free from colonial mentality, as I keep saying. Blacks in the mode of Lord Ndlovu, ethical, solid, sincere, proud, conscious, and that exude empathy. All these are intangible values, but critical in the making of a sound society, particularly the making of good leaders. Lord did not have to organize that Christmas party for mine workers and their families as an official of the mine he worked for. He did that because he was hard-boiled in those intangibles and more. Lord Ndlovu, I can't explain that into English. Lord ke motho, le a nkwa. Imagine where we would have been if since 1994 we had a Lord Ndlovu as a teacher in every classroom in our schools, as a principal in every school, as an education district officer, as an NEC, or as a minister of education. Imagine if we had a lot in Ndlovu as a municipal councillor in all our 257 municipalities, as a mayor or as a municipal manager. Imagine all our municipalities functioning properly, clean audits, clean streets, and neighborhoods everywhere, and clean and consistent water, and no flowing sewage in our township streets. Imagine the Auditor General not having to make these adverse findings against municipalities year in and year out. Imagine us having a lot in Ndlovu running ESCOM, SAA, DNAM, SABC, Transnet, PRASA, Post Office, etc., that do not require bailouts by the National Treasury every so often. Imagine the country not having a need to establish a Zondo commission to show us how rotten these entities are. Just imagine. Imagine us having a lot in Ndlovu, running our intelligence services, keeping the country safe, and we not being the laughingstock of everyone else in the world. Imagine a lot in Ndlovu running our criminal justice system so that we can all go about our business in safety in this country, not scared we could be hijacked or murdered and the perpetrator is never found. Imagine women and children living their lives without being murdered, raped, or maimed in the most horrible manner conceivable. Just close your eyes and imagine such a South Africa with a lot in Ndlovu, ethical, solid, running all these things. Imagine that South Africa. To end, Black people are the vast majority in this country, and they are in charge of the state. If things go wrong, as they are now, they are to blame. So, we have no option but to demand that most of us, especially the Black petty bourgeoisie, be conscientized in order to cleanse our psyche of all traces of inferiority complexes and colonial mentality. This to enable us to play our role in building a great South Africa for future generations. One that does not blare, she, anything. One that black sheep a lot. But more importantly, the one that manasesi, everything with passion and confidence. Let's move as many of us as possible into Lord Ndlovu's. If there is someone, or some people in this room who might be offended by one or two things I've said tonight, and are itching to beat me up, please don't do it tonight. Just sleep over it. And if tomorrow you still feel the same, then maybe. But that will also give me an opportunity to run away. Thank you very much.